Blog about embracing the crickets in your life or embracing the silence, and not only in your life but in your classroom as well. I was that type of teacher that always had a classroom that was very noisy. If you taught next to me, you were going to hear noise most of the time, and it was very rare that I had my students do very silent work. Most of the time they were talking to each other, they were engaging in projects with each other, they were collaborating, and I thought this was great teaching, and it is good teaching to have your students talking to each other. But I realized that I really never gave my students very much silent time. And I think I developed this because in my life, as I've reflected in the last couple of years, I realized that I actually did not like silence very much. I grew up in a very large family, and in my family it was often loud and noisy, and kind of everybody's talking all at the same time a lot of times, and we all have opinions, and so there's a lot of noise that goes on, and I found comfort in that noise over the years. We most of the time either had the TV on, we were talking, we were watching TV, and even when I went to college and I even lived by myself, I found myself comforted by noise. I didn't like to sit in silence. And I think this was because, I grew up being comforted by noise. And so I found myself cutting on the TV, not even watching it, but just being comforted by the background noise that was there. Even when I had people over, I would have the TV on just because it was comforting to me to have noise. When I got in elevators, I hated to be stuck in elevators with people because everybody's just looking awkwardly in silence. And to me, silence just was very awkward. But that's not the case for everybody. But I realized that I took my notion of silence and the way I made silence awkward in my own life, I took it into my classroom, because I very rarely allowed students silent time and time to really process in silence in my classroom. When I would ask a question, I would maybe give students 1 to 2, maybe 3 seconds to respond. And if they didn't respond, I was moving on to the next student. I was even talking, trying to help them out. I was repeating the question for them. And I realize now that many students did not need me to do that. They needed time to think. But I felt so awkward because I was standing in front of them in silence. And therefore, I was rushing them to think and think through an answer. So I realize now that I should have given my students a lot more process time to think and reflect on their answers. And I know sometimes for teachers, if you're like me and silence is awkward for you, this can feel very weird. You ask a question and then you just kind of stand there. But maybe you want to come up with a strategy of counting to 10. Maybe you want to play some type of musical song, or maybe you just want to tell students. When I'm working with students and adults now, I let them know up front, I'm going to ask you a question and then I'm going to give you some time to think before I even call on anybody to respond. Because some students are external thinkers and they can think of things on the fly and they can answer on the fly. Those are your 1 to 2 second type of students. But many of our students, and in fact most, are internal thinkers. They need time to process, and then they will be able to articulate better what they want to say, rather than just asking something on the fly and answering it. So give students time to process, and this again may be you telling them or you counting after you ask them a question, and just letting them know, I'm going to give you some time to think about this. Another strategy that you can use that I've seen that is effective, and I wish I had used more of, is journaling. So if you ask students a question, allow students to keep a journal and journal in their notebooks before you even call on anyone to answer. Not only does this give students time to process their thoughts, but it gives them time to write it out. Writing their thoughts out or drawing their thoughts out helps learners and us make our thinking visible. So therefore, giving them that time to draw or write is going to help them process their thoughts more so than if you just say, well, what's the answer to so-and-so? Or what do you think about this? And then having students answer. Also, if you're not a teacher, and maybe you're just a parent, I would encourage you to use this strategy with your children too. When you're asking them a question, give them some process time to think about it. And I used to think that silence was so awkward. When I ask a question, I wanted an immediate response. When I sent a text message, I wanted that response right away, or an email. But over the years, I've started to learn to embrace the silence, because when people are silent, at least that means they are thinking. They're thinking thoughtfully about their response before they jump to a rash answer or a rash conclusion. I know sometimes I wish in my life I had thought about what I had said more and processed it more and even written it down before I said it out of my mouth. And so that's true for everybody, whether you're a teacher or whether you're in any industry. Just taking time to think and process will help our thoughts be a lot more articulate and a lot more thoughtful. So allow students to journal, and then give students wait time. And by wait time, 10 seconds is at least a good wait time for them to be able to really thoughtfully answer the questions that you're asking. And lastly, I just encourage you to embrace the crickets, not only in your classroom, the silent time that allows students to think, but embrace it in your personal lives as well. I used to hate silence. I used to come home and I used to have noise around me all the time. And I have learned to embrace it and love it. I disconnected my cable. Very often when I come home now, I don't even turn on any TV or any type of electronic device. I take time to really sit sometimes in silence, to meditate, to read, to talk to my family, and that way I'm not listening to so much the noise, the background noise that's always going on, but taking time to really embrace the silence, embrace the crickets, if you will, for my own life, because I think it's during those times when we're still and when we're silent, whether it be in our classrooms or our personal lives, that we can probably find our most authentic voice. When we take time to journal and write our thoughts down, which I've started doing over the past year. Every night I take time to journal and write about my thoughts. I think that is when we're going to find our most authentic voice and really find our true voice in life and process our thoughts a lot more clearer and be a lot more articulate in what we're saying to people. So thank you to all of you that have joined me. Jessica, I see you. Courtney, and Hey Ain't Violet. And I hope that if you're like me and you wish that you would embrace the silence a little bit more, you share those strategies for ways that you can possibly work in a little bit more silent time in your life. Or if you are already embracing the silence in your life or in your classroom, take time to share strategies that you use with other teachers for how you allow students to reflect in silence and give them the opportunity to process.